This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, the very best podcast for regular comic book fans. I'm your host, Mike Rapin. Joining me this week, three fantastic human beings, just real swell pals. This week, I'm joined by Kait Lamphere.
Hello.
Kara Shimborski.
Hey.
And Paul Jasley.
Hello, humanoids.
Thank you all for joining me today. All three of you, because did you know it is the beginning of year 10 of I Read Comic Books. This is the 10th annual episode of IRCB. Every year I get like super confused about the number. And I'm like, is this like the 9th issue? Is this whatever? Like trying to figure it all the way back to like comic issues. And I think I decided like 5 years ago, like the official numbering. I've just run with it. So we're here to celebrate the full like beginning of the 10th year of I Read Comic Books, which is quite honestly the most insane thing I've ever like pondered in my life. I think I wrote about this on our Patreon way back at the beginning of January. I can't believe that 10 years later we are still doing this podcast, and that's not in like a bad way. That is like I didn't think this was going to go past episode 13 because I'd started many podcasts before I started IRCB, and they all only went to like 13 episodes. And yet, despite the entire world and everything around us, we are here 10 years later in 2025, and this show is still going strong. And boy, oh boy, I will tell you, I thought that in previous years, they were our biggest years. We did crazy stuff like zines, and actually we started doing stuff live on Twitch. We've done a whole bunch of different things. We started a Patreon. We had plenty mini series, Candy Bar, Antler Boy, This Is Not an Interview, Book versus Book, so many other things. This is the biggest year of IRCB ever, if only because we are talking about one of the most insane ideas that has actually come to life that I ever dreamed up and have been supported by my friends here on the show. But we're going to get to that later. I guess before we get into the legally mandated questions, I'm curious, how are you guys feeling 10 years later into I Read Comic Books? Kara, I'll start with you. How about that?
I was going to say, not all of us have been here for all 10 years, Mike. So
close, but yes. Okay.
8, whatever. Fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
It has been a delight. I have lived in 3 or 4 different locations in 3 different states while on the show. You guys were like my constant in changing careers and changing where I live and just so many things. And it's nice that I get to come back to this lovely, positive comic book loving zone all the time with a great squad. And I have just really enjoyed it. And when you said 10 years, I was like, that can't be.
I know.
We have too much fun. This is not a slog. What a delight.
Mm-hmm. It's still, I don't know. I was 25 years old when I started this show, like or 26 years old when I started the show. It's insane. It's super just insane. But anyways, Paul, what about you? How are you feeling? You've been here pretty much since the very beginning. So, I mean, like 10 years for you as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's wild to say that out loud. But I tell my friends about this podcast, I have to always say, like, I've been doing it for 10 years and people are always surprised. And what I always say is like, we're able to do it for this long because of the camaraderie we have together. We're all friends in real life and in the digital space. And we know we haven't got burned out. I think the format we have lends itself to people coming in and out, doing it when they can. It's never felt like a chore or a job. I'm sure sometimes it feels that way for you, Mike, or for Zander, but like for us, I just show up and talk about Batman once a week or a couple times a month. So, and that's the other thing too, is like when I look back and I think about that, I've always loved comics, but for me, even as a kid, it was a very personal thing. Like I just read comics by myself. I didn't have a lot of friends that read comics, but now I do. I have a ton of great friends that read comics. And if my legacy ends up being there's hundreds of hours of me talking about Batman on the internet, like that's a pretty good legacy to leave with. So I'm really proud of the show for that regard.
Hell yeah.
Paul, you talking about how when you were younger, it was just like you and a personal thing and reading comic books. Flashback so hard to high school, Paul, when I was getting into the Teen Titans comic books. And I have this vivid memory of me like explaining to my mom very excitedly how I found this like online forum where I could talk to people about Teen Titans. And like, that's what I was doing with my life after school. And she was just like, Kara, do you have anybody in person that you can talk to about this. So I started taking my best friend to the comic book shop, and then she started buying every single Green Lantern title. So like that worked out. But also like, look, Ma, I'm fine. I'm doing great. Got the group right here.
Yep.
And we've been doing it for a really long
Discord.
time. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Kate, how about you? You've been here for quite a while too. I mean, I really should have had a newer person on the show for this week, but I figured I got to talk to the old heads. So, Kate, what are your thoughts?
Yep. Well, the podcast is a reason to continue my hobby of reading comic books with no shame about how much money or time I'm spending on it. And considering how many times a month I go to the library and how many books I buy just because they're on sale or because I want to support a local comic book shop or a local bookstore, this has only happened to me one time where I read something this past week that I got out of the library, and then I went home and there it was on my bookshelf.
Which has definitely happened to Mike before. Mike has definitely like double or triple bought things without realizing it.
Listen, I've got an entire we don't have to get into that. That's a totally different piece of the show. But okay, I'm glad that you're all feeling the same way as me. I'm feeling very, very happy, very proud. I mean, again, I wrote about this on our Patreon. I cried a lot while I was writing this big online journal to the people who are on our Patreon, which you can go read for free. It's open to the public. Everybody can go read it. I'll put it in the show notes. But yeah, to think we've been doing this thing for 10 years through like relationships, through friendships, through marriages, through like international travel, ups and downs, the whole fucking pandemic, like crazy to me. Like we're here 10 years later. And you know, I've been here for 10 years. Zander's been here for 10 years. Nick White, who's proof listening tonight, he's also been here for 10 years, right? It is wild to think that we are still like not up at each other's throats, you know, like after 10 years of just bullshitting into microphones. So I'm super pleased, but we're going to talk even more about that stuff later. I'm sorry if I bored you. Please stick around. We've got more fun stuff to talk about, particularly comics. So let me ask those legally mandated questions, as instated by Paul. By the way, we say that a lot on the show. Paul was the first person to ever say legally mandated questions, I think, on a guest host episode. And I was like, we're running with that. That's cool. So I've got to ask you, how have you been? How have comic books been? And I realized I didn't number anything in our document. So I'm going to kick over to you, Paul, and then I'll get it all figured out here internally.
Okay. Well, you know, I feel like I should start off by giving a West Michigan weather report, since I don't know the last time we did one of those. It is very cold here in West Michigan. I believe it's like 7 degrees outside right now. And it's going to be even colder tomorrow. I think we get a high of 7 tomorrow. So
when I record, I have to turn off the heater so that you can't pick it up on the microphone. So I have no idea how cold it's going to get in the next hour and a half.
Oh, no. Yeah, it's pretty frigid. I'm glad I have tomorrow off and can just stay home, or Monday off to just stay home and read comics all day. So I read a bunch of comics this past week. I've been catching up on all my single issues, been piling up around my apartment. But one I wanted to talk about and highlight is the absolutely wonderful Godzilla's Monsterpiece Theater. I read the first 2 issues of that. It's a 3-issue miniseries from IDW, written and illustrated by Tom Scioli. And I guess the best way to sell it is the elevator pitch. It's Jay Gatsby from The Great Gatsby puts together a superhero literary team to track down and defeat Godzilla. I don't know what else to tell you to make you read this comic.
Okay.
Why is Jay Gatsby a superhero in this situation is my first question.
He's not so much a superhero, he's just someone with a lot of money. So he's able to recruit a crack team called the G-Force, which is him.
Not the J-Force.
Sherlock Holmes. Yeah. I know, it's so close. Yeah. It's him, Sherlock Holmes, Jules Verne, who's also a cyborg, and then the time machinist, who's, you know, a man from the future who has H.G. Wells' time machine. And we don't know his true identity.
How old is Sherlock Holmes in this timeline? Because Sherlock Holmes was pretty old at the last bow, and make him go to the 20s.
They make a mention of that in the second issue, where they basically like Jay Gatsby is like, I'm a little worried because we have Jules Verne, who I believe died before the 20th century, and then in real life, and then Sherlock Holmes is like, half my team might die of old age by the time we find Godzilla. So there's but I don't. It's been a while since I read The Great Gatsby. I mean, I read it in high school, but I don't remember him fighting Godzilla. I don't remember him meeting a cyborg Jules Verne. This is way better than what I remember The Great Gatsby being. It's super fun. Again, if you know Tom Scioli's work, this is kind of what I love about his work. It's very funny, but it's never like really tongue in cheek or winking at the audience. He plays it completely straight. Like it's goofy at times, but it's like, it's not the sort of modern humor. It's like, whoa, isn't this crazy? Like the dialogue is very matter of fact, straightforward. The action is very like, they're fighting Godzilla. It's literally Godzilla that they're fighting. And it's a fucking Great Gatsby in a submarine with Jules Verne Cyborg. It's wonderful.
I'm so hung up on the timeline here. In this timeline, no.
Let
I have a point.
Scioli have his fan fiction.
No,
please.
I have a point because Godzilla canonly doesn't exist until the nuclear age post World War II. There is no fucking way all these dudes are making it to the late 40s. Sherlock Holmes is definitely dead. So does Godzilla in this timeline exist prior to World War II and it's total fiction? Or is it like, I'm just thinking back to the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen has its problems, but Alan Moore was really meticulous about getting their timelines lined up. You're not seeing James Bond in the 1860s. You're seeing James Bond in the 1960s.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, Kara,
I'm going to hold on to this, Paul.
I know. This isn't going to answer your question, but there is a moment in the second issue where the time machinist reveals that Jules Verne had previously tangled with Godzilla and had given him the name Godzilla. So I won't reveal like how they got that name, but that is so. Yeah, they're playing with the timeline a little bit, but I think that's like, again, what I like about Scioli's work. I mean, this very much reminds me of American Barbarian, which is one of my favorite books that he did, or Transformer versus G.I. Joes, where it's just like, it's a stream of consciousness almost. It's like he's making up the story page by page. We're just like, here's a cool idea I'm going to do. What if Jay Gatsby asked Thomas Edison to help him make like a Godzilla fighting weapon? Like, that's a cool idea. And then he just rolls with that. It's like a one-page thing.
Thomas Edison would not be creating it. It would be one of the many people in his workshops, he would just be stealing it from Nikola Tesla. Okay.
Yeah.
Get your hands off your face, Mike. You know I'm like this.
Listen, all I'm saying is that if we rewound the clock by like 40 years, Kara's the person writing into Tom Scioli in the back of the just meticulous two lines per line of lined paper, letters
all over the place.
Just like in episode 481 of Itchy and Scratchy, you play the xylophone. He hits the same, like that's the same thing.
That's the energy I'm bringing to this conversation. I'm really hung up on the Jay Gatsby thing, though, because, Paul, you said you haven't read Great Gatsby since high school. Jay Gatsby starts, like, illegally running alcohol down from Canada in the 1920s to make money to throw parties on the off chance that he impresses the girl he had a crush on one time, who is already married to somebody else who's much wealthier than him. His whole purpose in life is trying to, like, get this girl's attention. He is not spending his ill-gotten gains putting together a squad of people to altruistically defeat Godzilla, unless Godzilla is going to blast a green light from the end of his pier. Like,
that might be where this is going.
Yeah, Kira,
if that is where it's going, I will be very impressed.
Kira, I wasn't going to give like a complete episode issue breakdown, but I mean, but it is part of the story. Like at one point, Daisy does get kind of like abducted by Godzilla. So
yes, that's the motivation right there. Thank you. This makes sense now. I can be
Kara's
less mad.
Back in. She's back in on this comic now.
It's again, like I just love, and again, like I love Scioli's artwork. It's very Jack Kirby influenced. The page layouts and the colors remind me of American Barbarian a lot, and I really love that comic because it is very much just like, here's a cool idea, I'm going to run with it, and then when that's done, here's another cool idea. Like, I understand like this type of story like might not be everyone's cup of tea, that sort of stream of consciousness action story, but like I love it. I just love how creative it is and goofy it is without being winking or self-aware of breaking the fourth wall or anything. The second issue ends with a mysterious newcomer to the team who's from Transylvania. You can probably guess who that is, which messes up the timeline even more, perhaps.
Is he alive? Is he dead? Is it one of the other characters?
He might be undead.
Guys,
oh my God.
I already talked about Nosferatu last week, okay? I don't need to get into that. I don't need people questioning my takes on that movie anymore, okay?
Paul, despite my many questions, you have sold me on this. Okay. I am intrigued. I do love a mixed up monster team romp. So
yeah,
I'll look at it.
I was gonna say it is very. I mean, obviously, it is very similar to League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but like it cuts out all of the sort of like symbolism and subtext, and it's just action. So it's great.
Does it cut out mild misogyny too?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's less of that. Like I said, third issue comes out this week on the 22nd. I can't wait to see how they wrap this one up. So another great comic book from Tom Scioli. Highly recommended.
Amazing. I think I'm going to grab this in trade because I can't not read Tom Scioli's work all in like one go. So I'm very excited to check this book out. But Kait, let's bounce over to you. How have you been? How have comic books been?
Good, yeah. Trying to stay warm on the couch under a pile of comics, and it's working out pretty well so far.
Nice.
This is something totally different, but also off the rails. This is Princeless, Volume 1. That's like Princeless, Volume 1, Save Yourself. This is by Jeremy Whitley and art by Mia Goodwin. This is like a chaotic, goofy parody of the traditional princess story. And so it starts with a princess in a castle, and she's all dressed up, and it's guarded by a dragon, and a knight shows up. And then it just goes off the rails, like in a fun way. Okay. And so, of course, the princess saves herself with the power of friendship with the dragon, whose name is Sparky. And I'm pretty sure that what's going to happen in the story is that Sparky is like the Sam of this Fellowship of the Rings, because so far Sparky has solved every second problem in this story. And along the way, this princess also makes friends with another young woman who is secretly a blacksmith, which is not allowed, you guys. Women can't be blacksmiths.
Scandal.
And I appreciate this book so far because any character who is in more than a few panels gets like dynamicism in some way. Like they're made to be more dynamic. They get like an extra little detail to their character. Like there's another prince or a prince in the story who's like gotten really big into poetry, which is also not allowed, you guys.
Wait. Is poetry
scandal.
just banned, or is it that princes can't read poetry?
It's the prince is supposed to learn sword fighting, and he's not learning sword fighting because he wants
can't
to
learn
read poetry
things
all day.
like literature and enjoying the arts.
Isn't the pen mightier than the sword? Isn't that what they say?
So the exception to this, like, let's make the characters more dynamic, is the villains. The villains are just one-dimensional bad guys so far, and honestly, I'm into it. Like, if the villains also liked poetry, I don't know if I would like this story as much as I do. Like, the dragons can just chase them off this way, and it's fine. There was this is like a very progressive story. Like everything is just talked about directly. Like for example, the woman who can't be a blacksmith because her dad wouldn't approve. That same character is starts this like rant or bit or something that's like, we need to make armor that actually fits women, and you actually see this room that has Diana, Wonder Woman's armor in it, Xena's armor in it, Sonya's armor in it, and
armor quotation marks.
Yeah,
exactly. Quotation marks.
And like the bit is, we need armor that actually does something in combat, and it's like, but the cufflinks, the arm braces, that's how you deflect the weapons, and then it's like, no, that's not gonna work. So over the course of this story, the princess gets some actual armor, and it's very exciting. It's a very exciting moment. I will say that the art style in this book seems to change a few times throughout the volume. Like it's just a couple of specific scenes, but the art seems very different. But there's not a second artist on this book, so I don't know if this was like redrawn later or if the book just took some time to put together, and so it depended on what was going on at the time and when the pages were done. I don't know. I'm speculating. I'm starting rumors.
Okay.
I really love Princeless. Maybe 10 years, speaking of 10 years ago, maybe like 10 years ago now, I do remember interviewing Jeremy Whitley for the Comixologist podcast, one of the cons that we went to, and he was explaining how he created this book because he looked around at all the media that was available to his daughter and was like, nobody, like most of this stuff, like none of this looks like my daughter, and I want my daughter to have like an actual positive role model character that looks like her that she can like look up to. So that was like his whole reason for starting this series. So you see, like, it's all ages. Like you said, it's directly addressing some stuff, which I think is a really good / interesting choice. Like, you don't see a lot of all ages comic books where you're coming right out and being like, hey kids, why don't you think critically about the media that you're given? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Some of it is like the example of Xena, for example. Like there's some stuff in this that I don't think that kids would get necessarily, depending on how old they are. Yeah, exactly. The parents would. So all ages. I think that like this is a book. It's very goofy and it's definitely like for a younger audience. But I've already requested volume 2 out of the library, so it definitely worked for me. It is like a pretty, like, a lot happens in this story and there's a lot of references and it's very fast. Like the story itself happens very quickly, or you can read it very quickly at least. But I had to slow down and like read it over multiple sittings. Like for being such a short book, I think I probably read it in like 5 sittings, just because there's so much that goes on.
Gotcha.
But I am excited to see what happens in this story and what they do with it, because there's a lot of potential.
That makes me think, though, about the experience of reading comics when you're younger, though, because I know that at least for me, when I was younger and reading like Archie or Tintin or Asterix, like I would just sit there with that comic book and read it over and over and over again. Whereas now I'm more like one and done, let's go. But when I was younger, it's like you have more time. They've done studies that like your perception of time does shorten when you get older, and when you're a kid, like that's where you get the like everything feels endless, and it's like it's taking so much time because your perception of it is different. So it's like you maybe would have more time. I did not mean for this to pivot into astrophysics and quantum physics, but like I mean, time is relative. But yeah, I wonder if like a kid reading that is going to have a different experience because they might be a slower reader than you, or might just have more time to pour over the pages.
Or maybe this is a feast. If it's a dense book, I mean, like you just have so much of just one book. I don't know. I don't remember reading as a kid, but I know that I read a lot of Goosebumps. Who knows? As we were saying earlier, 10 years feels like nothing. Didn't we just start this podcast?
I did notice that there is like a spin-off series that focuses on a group of pirate women that is also
read that.
Princeless something.
Yes.
So I'm going to read that at some point.
The Princeless universe. All right, let us know.
Absolutely.
Kate. Well, let me talk about a book that I read this week. I did read a couple of things, despite writing probably close to like 15,000 words between emails, Google Docs, and another thing. Nonstop writing, which is crazy. But I did sit down and read a comic, and that was Plastic Man No More. This is by Christopher Cantwell, art by Alex Linz and Jacob Edgar, inks by Marcelo Maiolo. I want to shout out our buddy Matt on the Discord, who was saying that they were reading this, and I was like, I really should get around to this book, because I think at some point, I think it was Danny had pitched this book to me and was just like 2 different styles of art, blah blah blah, or somebody talked about it on the show at one point. I was like, this sounds right up my alley, and then I completely forgot about it until Matt brought it up, and then I was like, I'm reading this right now, and it was like midnight, and I started it, and I couldn't stop because it's fantastic. For those of you that don't know, the story is Plastic Man, aka Eel O'Brien, wasn't always a superhero. In fact, he was a common thief who had a terrible run-in with a special chemical that turned him into the rubbery hero that we know him as today. After contracting a terrible ailment while helping the Justice League take out a villain, the comedic relief of the superhero team needs to make amends with himself and his life on his journey to the extreme to find a cure before time runs out, which is an extremely gross simplification of what actually happens in the book. But I didn't think a 4-issue series could actually be this good. If only because I've read a lot of 4-issue series in my time, and I feel like for the most part, they're quick, like they're rushed in some capacity. But this one, just like a lot of the other Black Label books, somehow they managed to pack so much story into these books. It may help that these issues are like 36 pages each, but I feel like I got an entire full-length comic book in 4 issues that the creative team put together, and I was really, really blown away. I didn't know anything about Plastic Man going into this, just like some folks on our Discord were talking about. They're like, I didn't know anything about Plastic Man. This book ruled. And I was like, yeah, who is this guy? I know I've seen like the Alex Ross cover. That's like, anytime you see like a bunch of Alex Ross paintings, Plastic Man is always one of them. And I was like, oh, he's Mr. Fantastic for the Justice League. Sounds stupid. Turns out, totally different guy. And I really liked where this book went. The thing that really that I really liked is that it doesn't really care that you know anything about the Justice League or their D-level characters or C-level villains. I think Cantwell just does a really good job to give you just enough information to keep the story moving without bogging you down with a bunch of history. And then you get up to speed really quickly, thinking like, I don't know, there's this mindset, I think, that is kind of the mantra of the story, which is everything about this story is all supremely ridiculous, but there is a heart that beats and you will feel it. That's like the summary that I could give. Because the way that they develop like Eel O'Brien as a person who then turns into Plastic Man, and then just the constant callbacks to the first opening moments of this book and how like definitive they were for him is fantastic. I think it's super well done in a way that is quote unquote predictable, but like in a really satisfying way. The same way that when you see a movie trailer and it tells you the whole plot, and then you go see the movie and you go, that was really good, even though I knew what was going to happen. So I appreciate that. I also have to shout out Alex Linz and Jacob Edgar, the artists on this book, because while Linz gives us this gross real world of grit and grime and like almost body horror throughout the entire run, we get this flip side every couple of pages that is like the Justice League, like perfectly colorized in blocky 1950s or 19 era style, like something you'd see right on the cover of like a lunchbox, right? Where there's like, this is what the Justice League looks like, and they're perfect and pristine. And it's very funny to switch between like this almost body horror gross comic to over to this super perfect, really bright story as you're getting the perspective of like how the Justice League sees Plastic Man versus the real world, in quotes, that Plastic Man lives in. I really, really like that. That was the thing that kind of got me into the idea of this book. And then when I saw it put to page, I was like, oh, nobody else is doing something like this. This is really, really good, like writing and crafting of comic book in order to convey a message. So yeah, I think on the whole, this is not like a perfect book. It's very hokey, but at the same time, it serves the character. It serves Plastic Man. Like from what I got out of this 4-issue Plastic Man series, I feel like I know him. And if the book was more serious or more tear jerky or whatever, it would not have been like a good book. But because it is kind of goofy and it does have these really ham-fisted jokes in it, and it does touch on some of the more ridiculous pieces of the Justice League, it all like sums up at the end. Like the final pages of this book are so stupid and perfect, I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. And I don't want to tell you what it is, because I think you will have the same feeling that I had, which is like, oh, I'm sad and I'm falling on the ground laughing because of how perfect of an ending that is. So I don't know. These Black Label books, some of them are pretty good. Have you guys heard about these Black Label books that DC's doing? They are pretty darn good.
They are pretty darn good.
No, anyways, thank you for letting me rant. I've had this book in my head for the last 24 hours, and I just, I dug it so much.
Well, your description, hokey, I'm like, yeah, because Paul, I don't know about you, but when I hear Plastic Man, I think Silver Age. Yeah. Like he is one of the most Silver Age characters over at DC possible. I mean, look at him. He's Elvis. So, like,
I mean, he's got I don't his little jumper thing that he wears that's got the little crosshatch thing.
Yeah,
it's always so funny to me.
So bizarre.
I know that. It's so unbelievably 50s. Like the sunglasses, the little curly hair. He's like
true.
You know, so every time he shows up, it's like, yeah, you're from the 50s. We all know you're from the 50s.
And I like they've never really tried to revamp that costume. He's always had that same look, the same sunglasses, everything. He's always been kind of goofy. And I'm really glad you read this book, Mike. I really enjoyed this series. As someone who adores deep cut C-list DC characters, the idea that you read a comic that had the Metal Men in it and fucking Detective Chimp in it, that warms my heart so much.
Oh yeah.
And Detective Chimp. We are in the Silver Age.
I am not joking. Like I feel like they were just like, what can we just easily play with and just use however we want? And it was like, as soon as the chimp started talking and he had a pipe, I was like, I'm in. I'm sold.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, and that's what I keep saying about DC, like lower tier level heroes. They're much more fun and interesting to read because they're not protecting the IP like they are with Batman or Superman.
Totally.
They're just like, whatever. Yeah, you can make Detective Chimp show up, sure.
I just want to talk about every spoilery detail of this book because, like, again, cannot believe that a 4-issue series like actually worked so well for me.
Mhm.
Because I feel like they normally don't. Like I see a number 4 on a book series and I just go, I don't know, maybe I'll skip it. So cannot recommend this enough. Plastic Man No More, just a fantastic book from start to finish. Go read it. It's on the DC Universe Infinite. I think there's a hardcover eventually coming, like they do all the Black Label books. Hopefully it's not going to be like Aquaman Andromeda and it will just like finish in 2023 and then maybe never ever come out in 2024 in hardcover. I still don't have my copy. If
Right.
anybody out there knows if they sell hardcover copies of DC's Aquaman Andromeda, let me know. I'd love to know. But this was good. Plastic Man No
Great.
More, highly recommend it. But let's move on. Let's talk about books that are on the top of our pile.
Mike,
What about
what I
Kara?
read?
What did Kara
sorry.
read?
What about
Sorry,
what I
I'm
read?
counting to 3. I'm counting to 3.
Whoa,
I'm counting to 3.
whoa.
Kara, what is on the top? What are you reading next? How have you been? How have comic books been? I'm sorry. I'm counting
I
to
had
3
a
in my head.
segue in everything, Michael.
Yeah.
because I also read a 4-issue series that's been collected in trade.
Listen, I'm a creature of habit. It's been 10 years of just 3 people. This happens every year on the annual. I'm sorry.
I finally read The Great British Bump Off by John Allison and Max Sarin after literally 2 years of it being on my TBR, like literally sitting on top of my pile of comic books. And every time I see it, I think, oh man, I really want to read that. Oh, I really want to read that. I literally bought this book to read it and I keep staring at it and not reading it. And so for the annual, I finally got to it.
Bless.
It is described as the Great British Bake Off meets Agatha Christie Mysteries. And my hot take is it's not an Agatha Christie mystery because Agatha Christie mysteries get to breathe a little bit more. So to Mike's comment about 4 issues not being enough, this could have gone for at least 6 issues and still packed a punch. Because they have a whole roster of Great British Bake Off contestants or their off-brand version for this comic book meeting up, and almost immediately one of them gets poisoned and one of the other contestants takes it on herself to sleuth out who is the poisoner, what's going on here. And it just I really love John Allison and Max Sarin's work. I mean, they did Giant Days. Kate's wearing her Giant Days of Our Lives
Giant Days of Our
t-shirt. We
Lives
did an
shirt.
entire mini series totally devoted to that series. I love the energy of their stories, and this one is just really the facial expressions really shine. If you love like an animated style where it's just like when I say animated, I mean like the faces can do like crazy things, but it works within the context of the book, and it's just such a delight to read. I really wished they did get to go on for a few more issues so that we could meet more of the characters, because with a full roster of Bake Off guests, because you're there at like the start of the show, you could easily have had one issue per character, like diving deep on that character if you wanted to. Like, can you imagine?
I wish. Oh,
right?
Dude, that's what when I read the first issue, I didn't realize how short it was because
Yeah.
I fully expected it to do that, where they would
an issue
give us
character.
all of the motives and then at the
Or,
end
like, the
we'd
whole
solve the
week.
murder. Yeah.
So it did feel rushed. I do wish it was longer. That said, this creative team does a really good job at like quickly sketching a character so you get their vibe, and especially with those more animated expressions. Like there's this one character who, when he's not baking, his day job is being like a modern day wandering minstrel, like one of the people with the guitar on the public transportation and stuff like that. So whenever you see him, he's just got like hearts and like swirls and he's just chilling, living his best hippie life. And everyone's like, is this dude for real? But then he bakes something incredible and they're like, oh, okay. Like, so, but yeah, a true delight. I never got like super, super into the Great British Bake Off, but I did watch a bunch of the earlier seasons before they did the whole like switching to ITV and stuff like that. But really lovely. I do love like it sounds so weird to say like, oh, Agatha Christie's like a cozy British mystery, and it's not, because people die in horrible ways, but like because her writing style is so like matter of fact and things keep happening in like charming country estates, like you do I can totally see why that's the comparison that they're using in the solicit and people are doing in the reviews. But yeah, totally worth a read. I was going to for my like stereotypical like 10 out of 10 no notes, but then I was like, no, this is like an 8 out of 10 because I loved it. But one of my biggest qualms with this was there's this one character who's like a stereotypical like nerd computer programmer. He's like stringy and pale with like long hair, and he's like lusting after the cute girl with the pink hair and like looking at her through like an anime babe lens. And it just made me really tired and exhausted because I was like, we're really doing nothing interesting with nerdy men? Like, are men and like he just kept being the stereotype like harder and harder. And like by the end, I was just like, I am not, my expectations were not subverted. I'm actively mad now because we keep like, you're nerds. You're making a comic book. Why are you doing this to the nerd characters? So I don't know. It just made me a little sad because it's just like, really, we're in the second decade of the 21st century and we're still like doing stereotypes like this. So that was just a little disappointing. And because like the rest of the characters are all like fun and nuanced in different ways. And then there's this one character where I'm just like, God, okay, fine. I guess we're doing this one again. So I don't know. It just like, I love it. I wanted to love it all more.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. It is a good book that needed more breathing room. And I remember I listened to an episode of a podcast where they were talking about this book in particular and how John Allison had specifically said that after Giant Days, that he was like, I can only do miniseries. Like, you can't do long form comics anymore, blah, 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 blah. Like, we'll see that paradigm. We'll see the, pendulum swing back, very, very soon, I'm sure. But like, I don't think that he's wrong, but I also think that this book could have been 6 issues instead of 4, and maybe it would have allowed for all of the characters to have a chance to breathe. Because this is maybe one of the most rushed 4-issue books I read in a minute that I didn't hate because I feel like it gets to its point, but it does have those problems of just like very little room for almost everything.
Yeah. I mean, there's almost 20 characters in this book. And so for 4 issues, like that's a lot of characters to pay attention to and be like, oh, that was really cute. Let me go back to that one. Oh, we're on a different one now. Like one of the co-hosts for the show is a cat. Like, more of the cat co-host, please. Like, and then it's like, there's the 4 co-hosts. There's the one who's like definitely Paul Hollywood, except he's got an eye patch and he's wearing a medal for like breaking bread valor. And there's one who's like maybe an alien, but that's only alluded to and never explained. I'm just like, give me more. So that's kind of where I fell with all of that.
Dear Mr. John Allison, I would like more of your bump off series, please. I'll get on the phone with that. But okay, we got to move on. I do want to say, because we're 40 minutes in, I want to say hello to everybody on Twitch. We're recording this episode on Twitch. Sorry you missed it if you're listening to this on Wednesday or Thursday. I assume you listen to these episodes the day they come out, always 24/7, 365. But we're recording this on Twitch, so thank you guys for hanging out with us. You're fantastic human beings. But let's move on to talk about comic books that are on the top of our pile, books that are new or old or something you're just trying to read next. We had a bunch of people in our Discord respond to our ask for what they're reading next. So Paul G is going to be reading Dreamcatchers by Eric Palicki. Danny's going to be reading TMNT X Naruto #2. Do you say the X? I just did. Nick's going to be reading EC's Epitaphs and from the Abyss #7. Peyton's going to be reading the Uncanny X-Men 1963 to 1981. Still digging through that series, which, like, good on you. That's tough. And Avocado Kenobi is going to be reading Houses of the Unholy. Get ready for something dark. Anyways, let me kick things over to Paul. What is on the top of your pile this week?
Well, Mike, speaking of obscure C-list DC characters, I'm going to be reading the 2nd issue of Metamorpho The Element Man. This is a new series that DC's putting out.
Nice.
I forgot.
Yeah. Written by Al Ewing with art by Steve Lieber, colors by Lee Lowridge, and letters by Ferran Delgado. Again, the elevator pitch of Al Ewing and Steve Lieber doing a Metamorpho book that should sell it alone. That's right up my alley. we're living in the year of Metamorpho. Not only do we have this series, it's the 60th anniversary of the character's first appearance, and he's going to be in the new Superman movie. So it is going to be a Metamorpho summer. I'm here for it.
Metamorpho summer. You heard it here first.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you.
Yeah. No, this is great. Again, it's one of my favorite C-list characters, Metamorpho, the Element Man. And Al Ewing is a perfect writer for this. He can be very funny. If you've read his Zombo stuff he did for 2000 AD, that's an incredibly funny series. Steve Lieber is a great artist for this type of book. He has a very clean, not quite Silver Age style, but it channels those elements, especially in the page layouts and the character designs. And he did that Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen book with Matt Fraction, which is just hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
And this book has very similar vibes to that. It is a modern Metamorpho story, but the way Al Ewing does the dialogue, the caption boxes, the descriptions, it does have a sort of not quite full Stan Lee, but does have that sort of like talking to the audience, like descriptive, like enthusiasm in the writing. And the main plot of the first issue was that Stag Industries was being infiltrated by a mysterious assassin named Mr. 3, who has very similar powers to Metamorpho. He can change into any of the 3 states of matter. And he's working for a secret group called Cyclops. And Metamorpho has to team up with his former nemesis, Element Girl, to find out why Cyclops is trying to destroy him. It's great stuff. Very fun Silver Age type story. I'm here for Metamorpho in any form. My one criticism of this book is that it doesn't have the creation credit. DC is usually pretty good about putting who creates the characters in the credits of the book. And I was really expecting, since Ramona Fradon had passed away last year, I really expected they to have the little Metamorpho was created by Bob Haney and Ramona Fradon. Hopefully they remedy that when the reprint or for future issues. But yeah, big ups to Ramona Fradon, one of my favorite artists. She created Metamorpho. And I'm glad this book is coming out to get people hyped for the Metamorpho movie, which will, I guess, will also have Superman in it. So if you want to jump in ahead of time, check out Metamorpho The Element Man. I'm so excited for the second issue. It drops this week. So,
dude, listen, you sold me already. I didn't realize Al Ewing was on this book.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're saying it is even remotely close to that Jimmy Olsen series that Steve Lieber did, I'm in. I'm 100% in. I think that Jimmy Olsen book may be one of the best DC things I've ever read.
So
that
good.
whole run from start to finish is just perfect.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to have to check this out ASAP.
Yeah, I mean, you had me at DCC list. So
Of course.
Well, Kara, what is on the top of your pile this week?
Oh, Mike, I don't know about you, but January 2025 is the longest decade of our lives so far. So I need something light. I need something light and cheerful. I need the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I need the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Saturday Morning Adventures, because you may recall last year I had a single issue of this comic book. And it really is like reading an episode of the 90s version of the cartoon.
Yeah.
And so I have volume 3 of the series, so I can actually read more than one issue in one go.
Nice.
Hilariously and unintentionally, also a 4-issue collection of stories, but I am pretty sure that they're going to be a little more standalone than perhaps the other things that we've been reading. And frankly, the back of this book got me with ShredderCon as a thing that happens at some point in this book, like
a convention for Shredder.
Yeah, it says when Christmas comes around, Shredder decides to put on a ShredderCon. That's the only information I need. That's the only information they have. They add it. It's Christmas and the Shredder, and there's apparently also a Halloween special in here. And I was just like, my favorite holidays and
Amazing.
The Turtles. Okay.
Amazing.
And then I will also briefly complain because I just look. So like I'm holding up the book now, and it is not immediately clear like which like volume in the series this is. I actually ended up like looking inside on the copyright page to figure out like where in the run am I, and then I realized eventually that like the number is just on the spine, And maybe it doesn't matter for a
Weird.
series like this that's more like one and done and episodic, where you don't really need to pay attention to continuity, but some of us are nerds and want to know where we are. And so the fact that I'm given just like a cover with like no indication of where we are, I'm just kind of like, okay, that's fine. I don't need it to be perfect. I just want to spend some time with the turtles. I want to turn my brain off. It's fine. Like it will be fine. But this is one of those things where I'm just like, comics and maybe they didn't make it clearly numbered because they wanted people to be like, I can buy this collection of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics and not worry about it, and like the number is part of the intimidating thing. So maybe it's not marketed towards dorks like me. Maybe it's marketed towards like people who are just like, hey, I want to get some turtle comics for my kid, this looks good.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of thoughts today. You're so glad you invited me onto the anniversary episode.
Kara, every single time I invite you on this show, I am pleased and delighted. Do not even try to cut yourself down like that. Not on my show, okay? Let me talk about though a book that is on the top of my pile. I just got this from the library, and I swear to God, I have no idea who recommended this to me, but somehow the library sent me an email and said, "Hey, this book is in," and I was like, I guess I better go get it. It's a big old hardcover called The Gulf. This sounds like a book that Kait Scotchless would recommend to me because the summary, this is a book by Adam DeSouza. I'm showing it off for those of you who are watching on Twitch. You get this cool cover. The summary that I kind of summed up is: staring down the final days of high school, a group of friends run away from home in order to join a commune. Cool. This YA anti-coming-of-age road trip adventure by talented up-and-coming artist Adam DeSouza captures at once the angst and humor of being a teen during a time of great transition. And I mean, come on. That's like the easiest sell to like any comic book nerd out there. We all love angsty teens. We all love times of change, right? Maybe that's just me.
Okay, X-Man.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. This book is huge, though. As you could see on camera, it is as big as my head. So I'm very excited to dig into like the humongous pages. It looks like it's in black and white and stuff. But yeah, I'm very excited to dig in. It's probably going to be a really good read, and I'm just very excited. But I cannot remember who recommended this to me, because I really would just want to be able to point at this person, because I have a feeling this book's going to make me cry, and I just want to be able to yell at them about that. So
it just like osmosed its way into your brain. It's the universe speaking to you. So this book is for Mike.
Yeah. Shout out to Jeff in our chat. Says, I'm not a fan of the angsty teens in my house, but I love them in comics. And
fair.
I appreciate that. Kait, what is on the top of your pile this week?
So this is a book called Kochab, Kochab.
Let's go.
This is by Sarah Webb, and it was originally a webcomic, and you can still find it all online at kochabcomic.com. And I heard about it for the first time through the Kickstarter, which was like hosted by a little publisher called Hiveworks. And I'm just going to read the description that they put on the Kickstarter because it does a really nice job. Kochab is a YA queer fairy tale inspired comic about two girls meeting in a crumbling palace hidden within a snowy forest.
Yes.
Which sounds great. And it fits in with my theme this episode of fairy tale inspired books about girls.
Yes.
And one of the reasons that I got this Kickstarter was because the art is just beautiful.
I love it. I'm looking at it right now.
It's so good. It looks so nice. I mean, this is a webcomic, like someone's putting this out like every week. That's crazy.
Yeah, I have mostly fallen out of the habit of backing physical books on Kickstarter because I don't want to think about it that hard, and so I just back the digital. But the art in this was so gorgeous that I was like, if I don't get a physical copy of this, I'm going to be mad at myself. And so I do have the physical copy, and like just paging through it a little bit, like the art style is really unique. Like the lines are this fine sketch kind of style. Like it's not like the cleanest lines, but I think that works for the art, because the colors look like watercolor to me, and then there's a lot of emphasis placed on like lighting versus shadows, and even like right on the cover there's like a fire of some kind, or fireflies or something. There's a bit of light and it works really nice. So it looks gorgeous.
Yeah, this is a very pretty book. I think I saw the cover for this on Kickstarter, and I said, "Doesn't matter. Yes, I want this.
Yeah, exactly.
Give this to me now, please. I would like to have this whenever it gets printed, please." And it's a big, thick book too. So
Yeah.
I should read my copy too. Okay, maybe we could be book pals and read the same comics.
Yeah, it's like we should start a podcast about comics or something.
That's honestly a great idea. I'll think about that and see if I have another 10-year commitment in me.
Yeah, as long as you do all the organizing, though, Mike.
Oh, great. Well, speaking of organizing, so I want to talk about. So thank you guys for chatting about comic books. Hello, everybody on Twitch again. I want to talk about what we did this past year really quick on IRCB, because we started. One of the big things that we started is we kind of moved to a 3 weeks on, 1 week off ish schedule, where we basically had 3 episodes that we would record on Sundays, and then on the 4th week we would release like a pre-recorded episode focused topic thing, which I think worked out pretty well. That was in response to me saying, guys, I've been doing this every week of my life for almost 10 years. Can I somehow get a little break? And everyone said, Mike, why didn't you ask us sooner? And I said, whew, I thought this was going to be a big fight. So we made it work, and it was really, really cool, if only because it allowed us to just stretch our muscles a little bit and try out some new episodes. I'm curious to know, you guys have all participated in one of those. What did you think of that this year? Were there any moments that you liked, I guess?
It is kind of weird, but we don't necessarily record at the same time anymore. And
For
so
those
sometimes
episodes, yeah.
I will have I will have like something else going on that day, or at least I'll like know that it's a school night, that I have work in the morning, and it just brings like a totally different vibe. Like I'm in a different mindset, and sometimes that mindset is gotta get work done, and so I'm like more analytical. Like I'm bringing a different different part of my mind to those episodes, and it's really interesting to like self-reflect on like what I noticed because it's a weeknight versus what I noticed because I was in my pajamas all day on Sunday morning.
So you're saying I should move this show to Tuesday nights every single week?
No,
okay. Like, what are you talking? Okay.
I mean, it's nice to have the routine of generally recording on the Sunday afternoon, because then I know just in general to like not make plans then.
Yeah.
So that aspect of it was definitely different, but I would do anything to make sure Mike and Zander aren't killing themselves over this show, because like Paul said, it's a miracle that we haven't burned out. So let's try to keep that positivity going, please.
Yeah. And I think it shook things up in a nice way, where it's like it started different types of conversations. Because like the normal Sunday episodes, it's like I like look at what I read over the weekend or that past week and what's coming out this week. It's like a very much routine, structured thing. So to have a pre-recorded episode where you can just talk about anything, and it makes different combinations of hosts more interesting, gives people other things to talk about. It's a nice way to shake things up, but still just be talking about comics.
Yeah. Danny in the chat here on Twitch said, Mike allowing me to host episodes by myself is insane. Yeah, I was going on a huge risk this year. I really didn't think Danny could do it. I mean, not that he runs a podcast or anything on his own, but no.
If only he had some experience.
I mean, this is the thing. I put people on the show in different places because I trust everybody, trust all of you to do this show. Like, I know that like the show is IRCB hosted by Mike Rapin, but at the same time, like I could feel like I could put any of you in the driver's seat and it would go over fine, because we know how to do the show. Plus, you all are fantastic people who talk very well about comics. You know how to have good discussion. I mean, I love listening to my own show when I'm not on it. That's like the best part, is that I get to come up and I get to take the IRCB feed that I have that shows me just to make sure the episode's coming out on time every week. And I get to actually put that in my listening queue to listen to, because I didn't know what was recorded that week. Right. That is a massive pleasure. We've been doing that for a few years now, but like I've been able to do that more this year, and that is super duper fun. But speaking of that, right, the other thing that's been really interesting this year is we started this new panelist series where, like, I think at one point, Kara sent me a message and was like, I don't know if anybody at home knows who any of these new people are. You just keep putting people on the show, Mike. What's happening? And I was like, that's a great point. I don't know if anybody knows any of us, right? Outside of the comics that we read. So we started doing these panelist episodes where we did, I think, Zach's, we just recorded Tia's. I mean, Kara's and Kait's and other Kait's and Brian's is coming up. I don't know, we did a bunch of them this year. Basically to say, we know that you read comic books, but what else do you read, or what else are you into? And that show was more or less me just digging into my brain and going, what else do I know about these people other than the comics that they read? Fortunately, it is quite a bit, and it has been very, very fun. I don't know, you guys have been on and around some of these panelist episodes. How did it feel? How was your panelist episode this year, Kait or Kara? I don't know.
We've not talked about me yet, Mike, but I was recently a guest panelist on Tia's episode. And that was fun because I tried about 4 different times to turn it into a Twilight show, and Mike headed me off at the pass every single time.
I did have to nip that in the bud every single time. That's true.
Which is again really funny because I don't actually like Twilight. It's just osmosed so firmly into my like cultural identity because I'm a millennial woman who came of age when that book was like the thing. I haven't even read them. I've just seen the movies.
Sure.
Paired with wine enough times to
That's a good way to watch them.
have affinity. Anyway, but no, the panelist episodes are a really interesting experiment. Feels like a harsh word, but I guess I was kind of like, when we started doing them, thinking like, okay, well, we talk about comic books, and are these going to be interesting for our like hardcore long-term listeners, like our Patreon supporters and the people who are really involved in Discord? Like, are these episodes going to be interesting to them? Are people just tuning in going to be as interested, or are they going to be like, why do I care what Mike does in his spare time? Like,
sure,
but I do like that. That's just the latest example of us trying new things, and being here for 10 years, it's not the same episode every week, and there might be like loosely the same outline, but we do try new things and experiment. And if we want to do a Patreon series, Mike says, sure, go crazy, and then Paul does like a very meticulous Batman readout, or like it's just it's nice that we mixed it up.
Yeah. I was looking at the schedule. I made a list of upcoming episodes, not any of them that we recorded. That's where I got confused. But Kara's is coming, Paul's is coming, Nick's is coming. It's boy, oh boy, we got an interesting year coming up. I'll say that. But I don't know, Kait, we recorded yours, if I'm not mistaken, according to my big old calendar spreadsheet that I live and die by. So how was that episode for you?
I definitely got to just talk about myself for a while. That's what the episodes are about. Like, you heard about how much I like to knit and how much I like tea, and traveling, and how much I read, like prose books. I talked about prose books a lot, or audiobooks. I talked on that episode more than I've talked on any other episode. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I find them to be really fun, if only because I just like talking to my friends in general, and proving to them that I have interest in their hobbies outside of just the comic books that they're reading. But I don't know, those have been really fun. Renee's episode was very chaotic, as expected with Renee on the show. But I don't know, having a lot of fun. I'm very much looking forward to the ones that we are doing later this year. Like I said, I think we've got where's my list? I think I said Brian.
Because it's going reverse chronological. So you started with the newest people, and then you're going like forward in time by going back in time. So Paul will be one of the last ones, probably.
Are we getting an episode about Mike? Because I would really like that.
Hey, listen, here we're going to get to that. I think we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Are we getting a Zander episode?
Yeah, we have Tia's episode coming next. We have Brian, Paul, and Nick. Kara, your episode is in here too. I didn't write that down. But yes, we've got those upcoming. It's going to be fun. We're on the road to 500, right? So today's episode, we don't do numbering on the show anymore. We stopped doing that last year, but I am putting us on the road to episode 500, and I've decided that we're going to time the way that things are going to time out is that the episode for our annual next year will be the Mike and Zander episode. Because I can't just do an episode about me. I can't do an episode just about Zander, but I think if I bully Zander enough, I can get him on the show. No, I'm kidding.
Mike.
I'm kidding. I think if I talk to Zander, I think it could be fun. We might have to do like a thing like old school 90s version where it's like two CEOs sitting across from each other on a giant stage talking like the highest of business bullshit, but it's just about the podcast.
We'll rent a theater just for that.
Yeah, I'll rent the theater just for that. No, but it's going to be very exciting. Like I said, we're on the road to episode 500. That is like the craziest thing. Like we hit 400 episodes last year. We timed that and it worked right into our annual episode. I think we moved some dates around to make that work. But and then next year is going to be episode 500 on the annual, which is very exciting. Oh boy, I don't even know what we're going to do for that. I can't think that far ahead. But we do have a bunch of other stuff coming this year. I do want to shout out the guests that we had this past year. We started our year with like Dave Baker. We had our good friend Pat Loik on. Bijan Agha came on the show, talk about some Kickstarter comics. Zach Kaplan was a guest for a minute to talk about workbooks that he's been working on. We had Greg and Fake, who do the Santos Sisters comic that Paul and I met and hung out with at C2E2. Jesse Lonergan, Malachi Ward, CK Carpenter was on recently. Asia Simone. Last week we had Celise and Aubrey Lynn Jepson. I mean, crazy year for guests. I thought that was a lot of guests. All I can say is that for this upcoming year, I'm pretty sure we're going to have like, it's going to be like guests nonstop, and it's going to be exciting. It's going to be super exciting. If only because the names of people that we have that are potentially going to be guests in the future are insane. Just stuff we've got lined up beyond that. But that is just like a teaser of what to come. We also have our Goodreads reading challenge, which is starting. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts about that? I'm just going to, like I told you before, I'm just going to keep talking.
Sure.
But our Goodreads reading challenge is coming up. I think we've got like 14 or 15 books on it. I think that starts on February 1st is where we're going to start posting everything. So that's going to be really, really cool. Avengers Twilight by Chip Zdarsky and Daniel Acuna is going to be on there. Batman, Ego and Other Stories by Darwin Cook. Blue Book Volume 1, Day Tripper, Akane Banashi. It's a really good list of comics so far, and that's not even all of them. I'm very excited.
Say, like, Mike, looking at because you passed around a link of the Goodreads books that we've previously done, and I was going through the list. It's like something like 300 books over, because they've accumulated over the years. But looking at the full list of like everything that the Goodreads group has read, I was just blown away by how good a list it is. Like, it is such a good list, and literally everything that I was thinking of to maybe add to this year's challenge, I was like, ooh, what about, we already did it. We already did it because we have such good taste.
Yeah.
So,
that's a combination of like us as podcasters. I think we've been doing it since like 2017 or 2018. We were doing Goodreads reading challenges, which like shout out to Kate Scotchless. That was her idea. And I think we've been running with it. And it's like, it's the greatest thing that we've done for the show in a lot of ways. Cause it's like, hey, do you just want a really, really good comic to read? Here's a list of what you said, like 300 books now that we recommend. And that's a combination of not only us on the show, but also a bunch of our patrons we've been asking, hey, you guys are patrons, give us a book that you can put on this list. And I tell you, as much as we pick good books on this show, those guys find stuff that I'm just like, damn, that book ripped me in half. How dare you? Please give me another suggestion like that, Yeah, so it is a killer list, and this year is looking to be another banger list of comics. So I'm very excited for that to come out. That's happening, like I said, February 1st. You can look for that on our Goodreads, and we'll talk about that when it comes out.
Mike, I enjoy that your criteria is, I want this book to wreck me. I want this book to mess me up.
I mean, listen, I've said this before on the show. I think the only way for me to feel really deep, hard emotions is through the medium of comic books. So I don't know what it is, but comics allow me to feel things. Okay. But yeah,
that's really beautiful, Mike.
Is it? I don't know. My therapist may say otherwise. I'm not sure. But yeah, so that's really exciting. I'm very much looking forward for that to come out. I think we got to finalize some stuff and then post all the widgets and do all the things on Goodreads, because as much as that site is useful, it is still extremely hard to operate and implement things. But between myself, Kate Lamphere, Kate Scotchless, and our wonderful moderator Aaron, I mean, shout out to Aaron, honestly, for the last couple of years, who has been keeping the group like really just keeping the blood pumping over there. She's fantastic, and she does so much work, and she asks for so little. I'm just like, Aaron, please let me do anything. But yeah, she does a great job over there. So if you are over on the Goodreads, say hello to Aaron. She is absolutely amazing. But yeah, Goodreads is going to be good this year. What else we have coming this year, guys? I don't know. Anything fun?
Anything fun this year, Mike?
Anything fun this year? We've got a Patreon series, 2 Patreons. I guess a couple of Patreon announcements. I guess right. Better Batmobile, I think, is going to come to an end this year with at least the end of season 2, which is awesome. That has been a super fun series to record. Paul, I don't know, you've been recording this show for the last couple of years. Any thoughts on the coming to the end of season 2?
Well, yeah. Season 1 was pretty much a passion project because I adored Grant Morrison's Batman run so much. I just wanted to take a really deep dive into that. The second season was, kind of a mixed bag. It was like me picking some of my favorite Batman stories as well as like some really important, iconic ones. Just fun to talk about Batman, and it's been nice to do that with other people on the show, some of whom are more familiar with Batman, some of whom are not. Mike, you got to read my favorite Batman comic of all time, The Untold Legend of the Batman, which I was so glad you enjoyed. That was a great conversation.
Yeah, dude.
I'm trying to think.
You got me turned on to Batman the Cult, which I think might be one of my favorite Batman stories I've ever read.
Yeah.
Easily. Like, I didn't even know that book existed, and then I read it for the show, and then immediately bought the newest printing that just happened to come out a few weeks later. Like, serendipity, man. It was amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I think hopefully fans enjoy it. Like, again, it's become a joke at this point that I'm just the resident Batman expert. Although, I mean, Danny is also a co-expert as well. We have a couple deep Batman fans on the show now. But it's any excuse to talk about Batman I'm taking. I'm playing with some ideas for a possible third season, or maybe taking it in a different direction. Haven't really talked to anybody else about that, so I'll save it till I have more details figured out. I don't know. There's another Morrison series I've been desperately wanting to reread, so maybe we could spin that into another Patreon series if people like that stuff. So just throw it out there. If you enjoy those deep dives, let me know. I like to do them, and it seems that the other hosts enjoy doing them with me, so it'd be fun to do another one.
I'll borrow a quote from Brian from one of our Discord chats. I'll do almost anything for $5. So, support us on Patreon and we'll do a show.
Honestly,
no very little prompting.
That is all it takes, guys. I'm very excited to see or listen to the final episodes. Like, I know I was on the 80s episode, and I think Carrie's going to be on the 90s episode that's coming out. Buddy. That's going to be cool. So that means we're going to have a gap in our Patreon, right? Because we try to release one episode of something every single month. Sometimes the schedule falls off a little bit, but we do try to get to like 12 Patreon episodes a year, if not more. We try to get a little bit more if we can. So to replace a Better Batmobile season 2 slot in our schedule, we have a brand new series coming out from Tia and Kara called Wickdiv Uncovered with Kara and Tia, which is maybe the most interesting approach to covering a comic book series that I've ever heard pitched. So, like, Kara, can you give us like the high level overview of what we're looking at with this series?
High level overview, because this is Tia's baby and I'm along for the ride. Because
right.
Because as you may know, if you keep a keen eye on comic book Kickstarters, recently the Wicked and the Divine, the comic book series from roughly the time that this show started, perfectly enough. Did not plan that part. They had a really, really deep roster of gorgeous variant covers for that comic book series. And the regular covers alone were like iconic because they were like the characters' faces, just like stand looking straight ahead at you, almost like a mugshot, but like a gorgeous mugshot, because they're all like gods reincarnated as 2010s pop stars. And like, you knew that it was the Wicked and the Divine just by looking at the covers. So recently they did a Kickstarter to collect all the comic book covers for the series in collected edition, and So like I backed that Kickstarter. I'm pretty sure Tia did because Tia has all of the Wicked and the Divine in several different formats. But like, you know, a bunch of us on the show were like very hyped that this was happening. It's such like a, you know, we talk about the Wicked and the Divine often because it is such it was like such a formative, like powerful book to read at the time that it was coming out. And like a bunch of us, you know, me, Mike, and Tia were at Comixology at the time that it was coming out. And so that was like part of being like, oh, like, and it looks good in both digital and print. And look at these colors. And now we're all getting into Kieran Gillen and Jamie McKelvey's work. And this is like right after they were doing like Young Avengers and all this. So anyway, so Tia and I have been reading and thinking about the Wicked and the Divine for 10 years. I have a confession to make, though. I never actually finished the series. I still don't know how it ends.
Nick, shut it down.
But,
Nick, shut that episode down.
No. But that's on my, like, you know, 2025. I will finally, and this is, you know what? This happened to me with Teen Titans, the animated series, too. I got towards the end and I tapped out because I didn't want it to end. Like, I still have not seen the last episode of the Teen Titans animated series. I still have not seen the movie. Like, I hit a point where I was like, I need it to just keep going in my mind.
Sure.
Anyways, so with what we're doing with this Patreon series is we're going deep on the art of the primary and variant covers and how does it relate to the story. And the episodes will be a little shorter than our normal episodes since we're focusing on the covers. Longtime listeners of the show will know that the art is kind of an afterthought to me in many things, but Tia is an art historian and she thinks very deeply and critically about what is the artist representing, and she's really passionate about media literacy and our lack thereof in today's society. So I think even if you haven't read The Wicked and the Divine, and you're not planning to, but you're interested in thinking more critically about art and the story that art tells us, even if we're not reading something to go along with it, I think it'll be worth a listen for you, especially because the episodes will be a little shorter. So if you're interested about art and criticism and theory and history and learning to think a little bit more in depth, like I joke about variant covers all the time because I'm just like, oh, there's such a cash grab. And then Danny clutches his stack of variants to his chest with a gasp, like a waspy lady clutching her pearls. It's me. I'm the waspy lady clutching my pearls. But, you know, it's just, I think it'll be really fun. And Tia and I really enjoy talking about this kind of stuff together. You most recently heard us on our Elf Quest episode. So I just think it'll be a really lovely time and total programming counterpoint to what Paul's been doing at A Better Batmobile. So if A Better Batmobile has not quite been your jam, give us a couple bucks on Patreon and come listen to me and Tia instead.
Yeah.
Or all of it.
This is going to be the most interesting challenge of this program that I'm very excited to tackle, which is discussing a comic book cover in depth and maybe like the higher level thinking of it in an audio medium, right? Obviously, we're going to have copious amounts of show notes as part of this because we want to show them off all these covers. We want you to maybe even be looking at this cover while you guys are talking about it. But like the direction that we're going to go with it is going to be a real fun thing for us to tackle. That should be coming out in the middle of this year. So we're going to have a little bit of time to think on it, but I wanted to give everyone a preview because I promise you, if you haven't checked out the literally hundreds of exclusive behind the paywall episodes of IRCB, we've got a new series cooking that's going to be really, really cool. This Wicked and Divine, Wickdiv Uncovered with Kara and T. It's going to be super cool. So I'm hyped because I know we're about to record the first episode very soon. So I'm excited to hear it as the person proof listening to it. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff coming on the Patreon. Plus, we've got our the poll just ended literally right before the show started for our February IRCB movie club. And the winner, we were trying to get a poll for Superman movies, and the winner is Superman Returns 2006. So in February, we're going to be talking about Superman Returns 2006, a movie I'll tell you I may have some positive thoughts about already. So
interesting.
We'll see how 10 Oh God. We'll see if
Oh,
20
God.
years later Mike feels any different.
Woo!
Regardless of the quality of the movie, those episodes are super fun. I think me, Brian, and Mike all have similar taste, but also disagree enough to make the conversations interesting. Like, you know what I mean?
Totally.
I don't think there's ever been a movie that one of us has completely hated, but the others loved. Maybe. Well, I take that back. There's definitely some movies that Brian did not like. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely movies where Brian's just like, I hated that. Why did we do this?
Right.
Oh.
But Brian's a good sport. That is,
Exactly.
I think we'll say that. Brian's always a good sport about it.
That's why I appreciate
for $5.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I appreciate the dynamic we have for those episodes. Again, like, we try to do the polls and have them kind of themed to see what people want to hear us talk about. I thought Superman's a good pick because I'm pretty hyped about this new Superman movie that's coming out this summer. So it'd be a good time to revisit all those. Superman Returns, I've not seen since I saw it in the theater and absolutely hated it. So maybe my opinion will change, 18 years down the road. We'll see. 19 years down the road. Yeah.
I can't remember if there was a special theme for it, because at this point I am so broken by the fact of how good, by the fact that the most recent Superman movies had such a banger theme. I'm like, is there a way that it could be good? I don't know. I don't remember.
You're gonna find out.
It's going to be very fun to rewatch and discuss.
Yeah. I mean, without just doing the whole episode right here from memory, I mean, like, the problem with Superman Returns is that it's leans so heavily on continuing the Christopher Reeve universe that it's never its own movie.
Right.
Yeah. It would be fun to I do plan on rewatching all the Superman movies, even the terrible Zack Snyder ones. But there's something about rewatching like a whole franchise like that I find really, really kind of rewarding in a way, because like you start off great and then it gets a little bit less great, then it gets really bad, and then like maybe there's one that's like, okay, that one's not so bad, and then it gets bad again. Like it's the roller coaster of a franchise is always fun. But
leave the Transformers out of this, Paul.
Yes.
Listen, I loved watching all the Hellraiser movies, despite, I know I'm a broken record about this, but guys, there's something fun about that. I can't wait to do Saw. I got to do it. I'm going to do it next.
Wow.
But
I will throw my hat in the ring and say a couple years ago I did all the Rocky movies, and that was a blast because those get really weird and not good.
Oh, sure.
But in a really fun way.
I've never seen a Rocky movie. Now you're making me curious.
Yeah, I think.
Don't look at me like that. I'm not from the Philadelphia area,
okay, that's
Mike.
Fine. That's fine. I'm not from it.
I was just saying, like, that's exciting because you get to watch. I mean, I think the first Rocky is pretty much a perfect movie. It's a reason it won Best Picture that year. Like, it's a fantastic movie, and like, I think if you watch the franchise, we're talking about Rocky instead of comics from now on. If you watch the Rocky franchise, it maps on really well to Sylvester Stallone's career. Like when he gets really successful, the Rocky movies take a different thing. When his career tanks, the Rocky movies kind of tank. Like it's basically is his career trajectory on film in a very strange way. And I will say, like, I love the first one. I love some of the sequels. I think the Creed movie that came out 10 years ago is one of the best movies of the 21st century. So I highly recommend taking the Rocky franchise roller coaster ride.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay. I mean, I just did a little Jumanji marathon. Maybe Rocky will be my next one.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh man, that's all right. We'll do a Rocky episode just for patrons.
Great.
So I think I already said we're taking a break. Did I say that in the pre-show or did I say it today?
Pre-show.
Do it again.
Say that in pre-show. Well, okay. So yeah, so this summer, this upcoming summer in July, we are going to take an actual 100% no IRCB break. We're going to basically go dark for 4 weeks. We're going to come right back in August, I think, or end of July, one or the other. But we're basically trying it for the first time ever in 10 years of the show, and that we will just have 4 weeks without episodes in the feed. Like I looked through, I had to gather all of the episode titles for the show for something that we'll talk about very shortly. And as part of that, I got every single date that we recorded or released an episode. And I couldn't believe that we've only actually missed 2 weeks in 10 years. We've had an episode every single week for 10 years, with the exception of 2 weeks. So that's in my mind, I think that's a pretty good.
That's pretty good.
That's a pretty good record. It's not perfect, but you know what? I'll take a 98% any day. Okay. And quite honestly, I think that's insane. And it's an impressive thing that I think I'm so proud of that fact, that we've been able to make a show for 10 years straight and only really miss 2 weeks and put out 100 plus other episodes of podcasts, plus bonus episodes, plus extra. We put a ton of extra stuff in our feed too. That's just regular episodes of IRCB. We haven't missed a week for almost 10 years. So we're going to take 4 weeks off. We're just going to take off the month of July. We'll give you plenty of notice. We're still going to be dropping a July episode on Patreon. So if you're on Patreon, you'll at least have one something, maybe a bonus something. We'll see. I've been fiddling around. I can't stop making podcasts. But there will at least be the one episode that we're going to drop on Patreon for that month.
Plus all the other Patreon episodes. So if you're like, I don't have the money for Patreon, but you really desperately miss us in July, you just pay for Patreon for a month and binge us for the month while we're not there.
That is a viable option. But yeah, so we're taking that month off, and it's just to get a breather, just to get a little bit of a breather, and we'll be back in August. It's gonna be very exciting. I'm also gonna be very busy with something else in July, which I think we could just talk about right now, because I think we're about at the end of the show. So I had this funny idea that came to me in the shower.
As funny ideas do.
Ideas do. And I was trying to think, IRCB as a show, we are, and I say we, I mean I'm terrible about coming up with like a good way to actually celebrate a show, right? Like we're on Twitch right now. This is awesome. We got 9 people watching us. That's incredible. The chat's going off. Thank you guys for hanging out. And that was a big deal for me, I think like 2 years ago, when I was like, I want to do this show live. Like my dream is to just do live radio. That's all I really want in my life. But live radio in the year 2023 is live on Twitch. So I was like, all right, we're going to do it. I was very nervous, and now we do it every other month, and it's a breeze, and that's amazing. But I never really do well at the celebratory stuff. I never really find ways for us to hit marks on holidays. Our Christmas episode this past year came out a week late. Like I totally missed the mark on so many things, and it's fine. That is kind of at this point like a tradition in IRCB. However, this year we're doing something that is absolutely huge. It's the biggest thing we've ever done. It's the biggest thing I've personally ever done that's not like a work project, right? This is like an independent project. And so we're going to be releasing a Kickstarter later this year. Maybe it's in a couple weeks, maybe it's a little bit longer than that, where we're going to be celebrating 10 years of I Read Comic Books. We're going to have a link for that for anyone's interested. That's coming soon. But what I did is in December, came up with this idea. Let's do a zine. And what if that zine was taking all of the episode titles of I Read Comic Books that we've had for the past 10 years, the goofy ones and the weird ones and the no context, this doesn't make sense unless you listen to the episode ones, and then throw them at a bunch of comic book artists and say, hey, you pick an episode title and draw it. And in whatever interpretation you want. Go ahead, listen to the episode if you want, or just take it as is. Some of them are perfect. The one where Archie kills JFK, that's one of the titles, and somebody picked that one as part of the Kickstarter. Okay, some of them need no context. Some of them are perfect. Skin Cape is another one. Tia's coined episode from so many years ago. That one's going to be in there. And so we threw these at these artists, and they came back to me, and so many of them said yes. I couldn't believe it.
Who did you get, Mike?
I have a list. I had looked at the cover for this thing. My buddy Kyle Rose, who did the IRCB logo, is doing the cover for this. He's also giving us a cool little like sticker that's going to go on all of these zines. I'm giving away too much. I promise you guys will see all the details soon. And this guy, I said, he and I, we play D&D together, so we talk pretty regularly, and he and I vibe really well, like about comics and about all sorts of stuff. And we were talking about this cover, and he had an interesting idea. I had an interesting idea, and then he like snapped and he was like, Mike, shut up. I've got this idea right now. And he pitched it to me. And I don't want to talk about it. I'll show you guys the cover when it comes out. It's coming out very soon. But we had this idea, and then he went away for like 3 hours and came back, and he went like absolutely insane with this cover. I thought we had a really cool idea, and then he just went above and beyond in a way that I can't even imagine. Talk about a way to celebrate 10 years of this show. I couldn't have found a better way. I can't wait to show you guys. It's coming very soon. But man, oh man, it's a perfect cover. And it touches on everything that makes IRCB IRCB. I showed it to Kait and Kara and Paul before. What do you guys think? Am I crazy? Does it look cool? Is it,
No,
or am
it's
I
very
just like
good.
excited?
It's like
Yeah.
really cute, Mike.
Oh.
It's like so cute.
Yeah, yeah.
Fuck, shit.
It's chaotic in the way that the podcast is chaotic, which makes
Yes.
it perfect.
Yes.
We love a good
now
Easter egg.
Now I'm questioning everything
No.
about everything. No. I'm very, very excited about this. Sorry, I tried very hard to just contain myself over here and post a link to somebody in Twitch. But yeah, so we've got this zine. We gave them this prompt and said, hey, can you take a look at all of our episode titles and draw something? And a bunch of artists got back to us, like I said. Artists, I guess I can just give you guys a list of some of the artists that are coming on this book. We've got our good friend Kevo, who's been a guest on the show, does a comic called Z-Class. They also do a comic called Gayish. We've got the one and only Box Brown, Brian Box Brown, who has drawn things like Tetris, the games people play, Andre the Giant, Life and Legend, He-Man Effect. Claire Connolly is a tattoo artist and also comic book artist. She did this skull right here on my arm. She's also doing a page in this. She's done a comic called The Apocalypse 4 or Black Eyes. Malachi Ward, who was just recently on the show. Black Hammer Reborn, Cruel Universe did a cover for that. That's crazy. Flynn Nichols, who did all of the portraits that you see on the cover of all of our episodes. Flynn's doing 2 pages in the book. It's very exciting. Kyle's doing a page. He's doing the cover and he's doing a page on the inside. His may be, I've seen a lot of previews for this. He had a bunch of ideas for his, and his is like an actual comic. It's really cool. I'm very excited for that. Our good buddy Matt Burbage is going to be doing a page in this. I'll just say this right now. If you've ever seen Matt's work, I highly recommend you go find Matt's work. I'll post links to all these in the show notes for all the people we're mentioning today. Matt does some really out there, I would say, intentionally grotesque stuff that's just really pleasing to look at, in my opinion.
I don't like gross stuff.
Yeah.
I could stare at Matt Burbrage's tentacle teeth for an hour.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. And he's doing a page in this, and I'll just say he's doing Skin Cape. He called Skin Cape
Nice.
Oh
right
my
at
God.
the beginning. And I was like, okay, dude, whatever you want.
Yeah,
He
it's going to
sent me
be
a
real
message.
vile. I'm ready for it.
He sent me a message the other day and said, Mike, I'm going to draw the most disgusting shit you've ever seen. I was like,
No.
okay.
Yes.
So that's really
Yes.
exciting. We got Fred Stressing, who is the current artist on Rick and Morty comic books. Sent me an email, or we chatted over email, and he was down for this. So we're gonna get some art from him. And Martin Morazzo, who does Ice Cream Man, is going to be in this book. Plus, we've got I think 15 to 8, or not, maybe 12 other people that are also in this book. It's crazy. It's going to be 28 pages. Kate's doing the layouts. Kara's helping me proof it and stuff. We're putting this thing together. We got approval on Kickstarter, so it's just a matter of getting that link out there. It might be in the show notes, so check the show notes if you want to get notified for when this thing drops. But it is going to be a banger of a zine. And I'm honestly not just hyped because of the names. I've seen some of the art that's going to be in this book that's been delivered to me so far, and it is I didn't ask anybody to go this hard, and they did. Every single one of them are just going above and beyond. So I'm so excited.
Mike's been having a 2-week-long meltdown about this in a good way, which you can tell from his level of enthusiasm. But
like I said, I wrote 15,000 words across a bunch of Google Docs and spreadsheets and emails. I've been working my ass off to try to make this happen, and the fact that people just keep saying yes is crazy. And that's not me I don't know. I'm trying not to be weird about it, but I feel in 10 years we built up a lot of goodwill in the comic book world, right? People have heard of our show and they hopefully think that we're all right folks. And so when I email them and they see the IRCB logo, they go, "Oh, maybe that guy's cool." Right. And I'm also offering to pay them. For the record, I am offering to pay them for their work. That may also help, but I'm super excited. It's going to be, I don't know, this thing is going to be so cool.
Yeah, but Mike, you're saying I guess it helps that I'm paying them. Yeah, because you're not one of those people who's oh, do it for the exposure.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh. But
go ahead.
No, I really love it because we are doing this in an almost exclusively audio format, talking about an exclusively visual format.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really lovely and appropriate that you found a way to be okay, I'm going to celebrate this podcast, an audio format talking about a visual format, by doing a visual format celebration. It's like podcastception.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's the perfect amalgamation of like celebrating our show and also getting really cool art based off of the ideas from our show, right? Like the next hardest thing that I have to do once we get all the art and everything delivered is I have to comb through and figure out, all right, here are all the titles that people picked, and then I got to figure out who did what episode, because I think everybody on the show deserves credit for those episode titles, right? Because I don't know whose mouth uttered whatever weird phrase that honestly Zander probably picked, or I edited into something, because that's how our show works, is behind the scenes Zander picks out a couple of episode title potentials and then we run with something fun. And yeah, so that's going to be a big thing, but like everybody on the show deserves credit, but like to try to flip it back and participate in the medium that we all care about so much, I think is like the best way to celebrate not only what we do, but also just comic books in general. Yeah, so I'm really glad that I took that shower that day, because otherwise I don't know if I had come up with this idea.
Yeah, and Mike, I do think it's a wonderful way to celebrate the podcast, because I think ever since the show started, we've really tried to be a very positive force. Like, obviously, like we critique comics, but there's never negative energy from the show. Like, it comes from a place of celebrating the medium and celebrating the stuff we like. And like, I'm not a spiritual person, but I do believe that if you put creative energy out into the universe, like, it comes back to you. And like, you saying you're surprised by people saying yes to the podcast, that's because this podcast is all about saying yes to comics. And like, I think people that listen to the show recognize that, and maybe people that haven't listened to the show, like, know, you know, meeting us at cons or just the vibe the show gives off, they can tell it's a celebration of comics rather than just a way to make money through podcasting. Like, it comes from a place of pure celebration and love and positivity. And I think it's really nice to kind of have that reaffirmed by doing this project.
Yeah. I mean, I should have said, I mean, Paul, you're doing a page in this book too, right? We're getting a cool collage. Sorry. Exclusive. We're cutting that out. That's only for Twitch. I mean, I will say, Paul and Danny are participating in this. I'm very excited as well. Paul and Danny are also contributing pages. It's gonna be super cool, guys. It's gonna be real nice. I don't know. I'm hyped. I'm just like, I can't believe
you should be hyped.
Like,
it's really cool.
It is cool. And honestly, it's just like every time we talk about it as a group, we come up with more interesting, smart, fun ways to make this thing cooler without increasing the expense, right? Like, we're trying to just like, I feel like we've honed in on this really fun medium. Like, I'll say this now. You're gonna know soon enough. We're gonna be doing this like limited edition tape thing where you can get an exclusive tape of an episode of IRCB. We have to work out the details on that, and I got to figure out if that's even possible for me to record from my computer into a tape cassette. But like, that's an idea that we're floating around, and I have to like, I don't know. Caro, I pitched the idea.
I'm all about exclusive merch, Mike. I'm all about the limited edition drop, the false scarcity, the I want to be one of the 20 people to get this cool thing. I'm such a sucker for that. This is why I'm in marketing, because I fall for it all the time.
This is the thing, though. I like threw the idea out there in this chat that we have about the zine, and Caro was like, "Oh my God, Mike, that's so awesome." I was like, okay, I love this.
I was like, yes. And then I was like, already then thinking, okay, how many tote bags can we churn out? Like, can we get jackets?
I mean, we're talking about friendship bracelets and like, you know, all sorts of fun. We'll see what kind of exclusives end up on this Kickstarter, but we've got some really, really good stuff. I'm really excited to get it all out to you. Again, we will have a link to get yourself notified for that very soon for the Kickstarter, that if you're a Kickstarter user, you can just click that button. You'll get an email when it finally launches. Which a few weeks-ish, we'll let you guys know. Obviously, I'm going to scream about it for the next however many weeks on the show. But yeah, I want everybody to just get excited, because I'm so excited. It is truly giving me life, despite everything else going on in the world, personally and globally. This is the thing that is like my North Star of at least beacon shining light. It's something that's, I don't know, a really, really positive thing. And the more I work on it, the more I work with Kara and Kait and just talk to everybody about it, like, the more just like, I don't know, the better I feel. Genuinely, I haven't felt this good in a really long time. And this thing is driving me in a way that, like, you could ask my wife, Kelly, who, like, 10 years of Kelly just letting me record a podcast while she just goes elsewhere. Have to thank her for that. But yeah, she knows it's all I've been talking about. I've just been so hyped about this thing. And I really can't wait for you guys to just get a preview for it and hopefully eventually get it in your hands. Yeah, I'm so excited. Kate, are
I'd
you
love to
excited
see
to
it,
lay
Mike.
this thing out?
I am, yeah. We had a zine that we were putting together a couple of years ago that was coming out like quarterly every couple of months, and we had talked about trying to bring it back someday in some form, probably totally different. And this is it, you know, like this is a totally new idea, and I'm
Mhm.
really glad that we're doing something that celebrates the artists, the guests that we've had on the show, and that we are tying this back. Like we are like bringing together comics and this podcast in like this perfect form. I think this was a very inspired shower idea, Mike.
Well, and that's the thing. I said we're going to do more guest episodes this year. Like, I'm pretty sure almost every person who's doing a page in this will be a guest on the show in the near future. I'm going to try to make that work, if only because every single one of them are spectacular illustrators. Like every single one. Like I didn't just reach out. I didn't just put out an open call, right? I don't want to say like I handpicked people, but I genuinely sent out these emails one by one. I chose them because I was like, I love your art and I want to see more of it. Like, how can I make that happen? So I'm so excited because the vast array of people that are going to be in this book. I mean, Paul, you're counted in this. Danny, you're counted in this. Like, can't wait to talk to you guys about like how you approached the title that you picked, as well as what else you guys have going on, because that's going to be like a whole fun thing. And everybody else, right? All these other creators, like, can't wait to have everybody on the show.
IRCB Cinematic Universe.
Exactly. Just bring all these people in, and I could just hold y'all just with my arms. But yeah, that's what we're doing. That's the big thing that's happening this year. That's the huge announcement. If you missed it, rewind the episode, and you can hear me scream for 20 minutes straight. But yeah, anyway, I think that's all we've got today.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you guys want to talk about? Anything else you're excited about for the path moving forward, or reflecting on this past year? I don't know. Did we say everything?
10 years, Mike. I mean,
10
yes,
years.
I think
Cheers.
it's, good vibes, good comics.
Yeah.
Comics are good, and so are you.
Comics. I mean, we all wore the IRCB branded stuff today. I really appreciate that. I know I asked you to do it, but I really appreciate that we all showed up with that. You too can get your own IRCB branded merch on ircbpodcast.com if you want.
I was just going to say, like, I just really appreciate this show continuing forward, and it's given me an excuse to keep reading comics, because I'll tell you, there's some stretches where I'm just like, I get burned out. You know, I look at the pile of floppies in my living room, like, boy, why do I keep buying these? Or you get in a rut where nothing's really hidden. But then when I come to do an episode, I'll sit down and read some comics. Like, boy, I really fucking love comic books. And like to be able to say that into a microphone to other people and have that same reaction back, like, it's something I really cherish. So it's gotten me through some comic book slumps, and I'm sure we'll continue to do that. Yeah.
Hard saying, Paul. That really resonates.
I appreciate that we bring a variety of different types of comics to the show. Like, yes, Paul talks a lot about a lot of Batman comics. Mike talks about a lot of X-Men comics. I talk a lot about YA comics and so on. But yeah, that keeps reading comics exciting, because I don't necessarily feel like I don't have to pick up YA, you know?
I mean,
at
every
least give
time
you the option. Yeah.
No, every time I'm on an episode, I'm like, damn it, my TBR grew instead of shrank.
Yeah.
Yep.
Same.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I genuinely should go back and try to find all the episodes where I said, God, I got to put that on a list, because half the time I don't. But I do have all the show notes, so that's always great, right? We do have all of that. Yeah, man. I mean, 10 years is a lot, and I honestly can't believe it, because like I said, I wrote this whole big thing on Patreon, so I don't want to rehash it. You should just go read it, because I feel like I said a lot of things in a very succinct way. I spent a lot of time working on it. But yeah, in my basement at a house that I was renting, I decided to have my friend Nick get on Mumble so that we could, which is an old VoIP client, so that we could talk about comic books and record it. And much to Zander's chagrin, it sounded kind of rough, but ultimately that was the beginning of episode 4 of I Read Comic Books, was Sally Q. DeChronic, and I will never forget the episode of that, because the joke of that was that Nick could not remember Kelly Sue DeConic's name, and so he kept saying it wrong. But like, it started there, and then like we just kept doing it, right? Like, I had this old website, and I mean, sure, people have heard this story before, but I had this old website called Destroy the Cyborg, and it was kind of slowing down. And the one thing I wanted to do was like have a podcast, because I had a conversation with a guy in a bar, and he said, Mike, you should just do a podcast. You like having these conversations with people. You always ask people if they read comics, and if they do, you just keep asking them good questions, keep going with that. And I was like, all right, maybe we'll try it. And of course, like I, started talking to Nick. Had never met him in person. He was just some guy who wrote for my website. And then I ended up meeting Paul, who's also just some guy writing for my website, and eventually came over to my house. And it just started to snowball from there. We had a bunch of people on the show in the early days. Zander was on the show for quite a while. I thought it went well into the 40s of episodes. Right?
That's wild.
Tia's first episode is me and Tia and Zander. By the way, I found that out as I was going through things. And it is crazy to think that we've been doing this for 10 years because I look back on like some of the zines that we did, right? And the 2018 to 2020. And one of them was like, I couldn't imagine stopping this show. And then I read my entry for January of this year and I said, I couldn't imagine stopping this show. And it is crazy that 5 years later, I had the same thought. 5 years later, I have the same thought. Like, I think that we're going to go until someone literally says, Mike, you have to stop. Because I know I say to you guys, is this the last year of IRCB? And you go, what are you talking about every single time? And I go,
I had like a breakdown if the last time you mentioned that. I was like, no.
Well, and it's a question of like, I want to always keep talking about comic books, but I don't want to drag anybody along who doesn't want to, right? And I can't do this show by myself, right? And so it is a miracle that not only did I keep the show going, that fine, whatever. I'm just a guy. But the fact that there are 11 other of you that are still coming with me on this journey, that's crazy. Like 5 I'd get. 11, that's insane. And Zander, that's bonkers. Okay? Like Xander's been like my ride or die. We are Paul Walker and Vin Diesel right now. Like, until one of us dies, we're driving down the road side by side, racing a quarter mile at a time, okay? Or something.
We're still close enough to the Christmas season where I just got a visual of like Mike as a deranged Santa Claus, but he just keeps putting panelists into his bag, so we're just like all popping out of the bag, and Mike's just like going around through the village like.
I mean, that's a pretty good, accurate description. So,
do some art made of that.
I will. Any artists out there, if you want to draw it, let me know. Anyway, so yeah, 10 years is a lot, and it's amazing. And I haven't felt this excited to do the show since last year. I feel like every year this is the reinvigoration of Mike Rapin, in that I'm reminded how much we did and how fucking incredible this group of people is, and how amazing it is and satisfying it is to get this show out the door every single week, despite the ups and downs and frustrations I may have here and there. It always pays off, because when I think back on it, this is like one of the few things in my life that I can say I look back on, and 95% of it is like all positive vibes, right? You look back at a job that you liked and you go, yeah, but I worked with that person, or that was my boss and I fucking hated that person. Listen, nobody else, you don't do things for 10 years. You just don't. Name another thing you've done for 10 years straight, constantly. Right. It's so few. And I don't think there's anything else in my life that I've done for this long. The only thing that I could say has been as consistent is being with my now wife, right? Like Kelly, and then podcast. That's it. So like,
I was gonna say, like, Mike, haven't you been married for almost 10 years?
No, I've only been married for 5 years. Thank you very much. We dated for too long. So anyways, all that is to say, this may sound like I'm bitter or angry or something. I think like that is me just, I feel really proud, and it's hard to feel proud because pride is a thing that can be associated with like selfishness and nepotism and whatever, not nepotism, all that shit, that just bad vibes. I don't want to say that I don't want to say that I'm not proud of this show, because I am, and it took me a long time to not feel weird and like shameful about the podcast. And now I'm like, I've been doing a podcast for 10 years. What the fuck have you done? Right? That is my mindset. Because I love this show. I love all the people like who hang out with us on Discord and who hang out with us on our Twitch chats, and just like have reminded me that the comics community isn't the negative shit space that it is on the internet in social media. Right. It's like, it's actually full of some really cool and wonderful human beings that genuinely care about you and want to make sure that you're having a good time in the comics experience because they want to have a good time in the comics experience. Like, it's a very, like, the circle of people that we hang out with in this comics group, like not just on the show, but in our little community on Discord, is like the place that I want to be in comics. I don't care about anywhere else. I just want the cool folks that we hang out with, and that's what we built in 10 years. And it has been it's been an honor to like be the leading person on that, but I can't say that I did that alone. That is all of you, everybody listening, everybody who's been on the show. It is all because of you that we are here today. I have just been the guy with the oar. That's it. You know, you built the boat. I'm trying to make this metaphor work and sound good, but that's where I'm at.
You're the I don't even know about rowing. I'm like, you're the guy calling the rowing pace and we're all pulling on the oars.
Something like that. All right. We've been doing this show for a really long time tonight and in general. So I think we should wrap it up. I want to say thank you to everyone again, one more time. Thank you to Nick for being on here. Thank you to Paloma and Zach and Kara and Tia and Kate, Renee, Brian, Zander, Paul, Nick. Who else am I forgetting? I don't know. Thank you all of you for being on the show and doing the show with me. No. Not there. Not yet.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Listen, it's been a pleasure, and I can't wait to do another year and another year and another year. I want to say thank you to my wonderful wife who has put up with me doing this thing for 10 years and has worked her life as well as mine around this podcast every Sunday. Thank you to Zander for being the rock that makes this show like solid. Without him, we would not have the foundation that we have. And yeah, thank you to everyone out there who's listening. You are fantastic human beings. You truly make reading comics and talking about comics worth it every single week. I can't thank you enough. I think that's it. Thanks, guys. So I don't know. Next week's show is Tia's panelist episode, and we're getting right back into it next week. It doesn't stop here, okay? Nope. The show's gonna keep coming out. Next week's show is me and Kara and Tia. We're doing Tia's panelist episode. We recorded this a little advanced so that we would have it ready. So get ready for that next week. And boy, oh boy, can't wait to talk about this Kickstarter more. Once we get all the details solidified, oh, you guys, it's gonna be great. So go, thanks for listening. Till next time, comics are good, and so are you.